on our Facebook. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 54 of our mock interview and feedback. It's Wednesday, May 4th, so we hope that, or rather, May the 4th be with you. And we're here for another mock interview with Corey Hiramoto. And joining him today is Simran, who is an engineering project manager over at Apple. Or engineering project manager who is looking to work at Apple, rather, as the job description states. So for those of you who are watching both on Facebook and or on Zoom, feel free to ask any questions of interest or just sit back and watch. Corey, going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Albert. Nice to meet everybody again. Thanks for tuning in late on a Wednesday evening. We really do appreciate it. It's going to be action-packed time today. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I'm going to kick it over to Simran just to give a quick background introduction of herself and so some quick advertising about what she's looking for, opportunities, and her background. And if anyone wants additional tips and tricks on interviewing, please do check out my Career Shakers YouTube channel. It's just all one word. And in terms of the formatting today, we're going to go through hopefully 5 or 6, maybe even 7 interview questions, and then we'll pause at the end of each question for feedback. And I'm also open to audience suggestions. So if anyone watching this has questions that they want us to run through, please don't be shy. Let us know. We want to make sure that all of you get as much value as possible. But Simran, excuse me. I'll kick it over to you if you want to give a quick background and introduction about yourself.
Yeah, I can do that.
This is in the non-interview setting, so feel free to just talk about your skills.
I would still go over as if it is an interview setting. I'll try to. So thanks for the opportunity and appreciate your time. I am a certified associate in project management and further pursuing my training in project management through University of Massachusetts. I hold a degree in electrical and electronics engineering. And at my current job at Analog Devices as a test engineer, on day-to-day basis, I collaborate with cross-functional teams using project management tools to deploy quality DC-DC power converters into the market. I use Lean Six Sigma principles to assure quality. And LT8290 is a buck boost converter project I led from testing to closing phase. And at my previous internship, I was performing technical responsibilities, but I had more direct interaction with customers. I found that my strengths lie in people, and after acquiring enough technical knowledge, I'm confident and ready to take on project management roles.
Awesome. So are there certain companies, industries that you're targeting? And so if the community really likes your background and your experience, they can reach out to you?
So I have mostly done system on chips at my internships. And then currently also it's still in integrated circuits. So power integrated circuits is the domain. And yeah, I think IoT devices, essentially, anything that falls in that would be my target to go into.
Alrighty, cool. So if anybody has opportunities or know of opportunities in that industry, please do reach out to her. So today, we're going to be practicing for a sustainability project manager role at Apple. And how it's going to work is we'll just treat this as a regular interview. So I'll ask an interview question and then she'll give her answer. I will not give any help or hints until the answer is done. I've got about 5 or 6 questions that I drafted up based on the job description and her background. But again, if anyone in the audience has questions for us, don't be shy. We would love to use your questions as well. Simran, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. So why don't you tell me about your project coordination experience?
So I work with design, product, and production engineering teams, and my team, of course, test engineering teams to work on doing reproducibility, repeatability analysis, as well as cause and effect analysis, FMEA, failure mode and effect analysis, to make sure that the units work or pass functionality test, delivering essentially they are supposed to work as promised. If they don't comply with the standards or malfunction, then that's a huge quality defect. For example, with LT8290, through statistical sampling, a project management tool, it was found that 30% of the units failed functionality. That's a huge no, because there's a 30% chance that the unit would not even turn on. So we used cause and effect analysis. I grouped 4 possible causes as software, hardware, equipment, and the design of the IC itself as the causes. Upon trial and error, it was found that the units had a design flaw because they didn't pick up the right measurement. You could see on the graph that for some reason there's a spike in there that in the reading, which most 70% of the chips don't have, but 30% do. So with the proof in hand, it was explained to the designer what the issue is, and then he took over to resolve it.
Okay. So this example itself is super powerful. I also like the structure that she uses, right? Like the STAR. The example would be phenomenal if this was for like a QA test engineering position. But since you are doing a bit of a career switch, and that's why I worded this question the way that I did, I want you to focus on your project coordination role within that problem or within that project, right? As you've told the story, which of course is your actual job though, but as you've told the story, I didn't get a sense of your project management experience, right? I know in your non-interview intro, you talked about that you are Lean Sigma certified. I was hoping that that would be somewhere in your answer, telling me about how you've applied these concepts at your job, right? How you maybe coordinated within different teams to resolve this issue once you figured out that it was from design, right? So make it sound less test engineer focused, but more project management focused. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I would say overall, the answer or the example is super powerful, right? It shows your technical expertise, but because this is a project coordination role, that's where I would want you to focus more of your storytelling.
Got it.
All right. Let's try another question. Okay. So why don't you tell me about a large scale project that you've managed?
LT8290 would be a large scale product that I managed, from testing to closing phase. And then I had to, so for this project, I developed the schematic and the electrical circuit that goes on the Eagle test systems, which is our testing equipment. Including, I also designed the software that goes hand in hand with the hardware. So once the hardware and the software are ready, then the designer sends over the package integrated circuits to be tested on the board. And after testing both the package unit as well as the silicon itself, if it passes all the criteria, then we release it into the market. But this one had to be closed because again, 30% of the samples failed and the designer had to work on it. It turned out that the rework would take a couple of years to be done. It was an expensive rework, so they paused it on the testing phase, and I went ahead with the closing process of the documentation and sent it over to the design. It's more technical.
Okay. I saw you kind of commented to yourself there at the end.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
No, I'm thinking the very reason I wanted to have this mock interview was to make to have that practice of translating technical into project management side. And I did try, but it seems like it's not enough. I have one like a para or question prepared for going above and beyond to help a customer through, and that was through my internship experience. Should I go ahead with that one? Like how
you're going to use your internship experience to answer the question about a large scale project that you managed?
No, never mind. This won't work.
Okay. How would you try and twist this story to sound more project management focused? Now,
I guess I
you
would
and I
talk
both
about,
know that your role is as a test engineer, right? But you're trying to do
yeah,
a career switch. So in this case, you would not want to sound so much like a test engineer, but more as a project, more as an engineer who also does project management, if that makes sense, right?
I guess I
So,
would talk about my experience with the design engineer. I worked with the design engineer and his assistant. She came, so my colleague from other department came over to my side, and we collaborated together to solve this issue on a tiny lab setup. We both had decided to take an approach, and that was to have minimal equipment, just do one specific test that would that has the issue, and I think I would elaborate more on that. Would become technical. But I collaborated with her, and we sent out the results to the design head. I think those are some of the words I would use it to rephrase the entire paragraph for the collaboration, what I see it. And we there was then we resolved our conflict with the design head, saying that the designers always blame the test engineers that, oh, it can't be the design, it's you who's not figuring out the test, and it should be passing. Why would it fail? But then we as test engineers have to show them proof. I think that conflict resolution also I would add as an star example to expand to answer this question. That would be the approach. The situation, the action, and the resolution.
okay. So, and again, for those of you who are watching, this is a unique case because she's doing a sort of I would say like a half career switch. So some of this advice isn't applicable for everybody, because if you're applying for a role that you're already doing, it, like, how she's answering these questions is perfect. But because she's going to do a switch, we're going to have to probably we're going to attack it from a different angle. Okay, so you said you were Lean Sigma certified, right? So in your classes, what are elements of project management that exist?
So the way I saw so I've done both project management courses and Lean Six Sigma courses, not certification. I'm a certified associate in project management, which is one step below project management professional. So through these courses, what I'm seeing is project management is like an umbrella, and Lean Six Sigma is the math to the project management. The most I have applied from Lean Six Sigma is
Okay, yeah.
so
Sorry, I totally am throwing you off that way. So forget Lean Sigma,
Oh,
just
sorry.
in general, right? Like, what are like? Let me reword the question. What do project managers do? Let's start
Project
there.
managers handle the flow of the entire project from start to finish. They make sure that each activity gets done without impediments in the path. So
What are
if
those
the
What are those
project
activities called?
Story points, but that would be agile, and it could also be called phases,
Phases, milestones,
milestones. Yeah.
story points. Okay, go on. So project managers are in charge of managing large scale projects. They set milestones, or
Oh, I do have milestones in my project. Okay.
they set milestones. Their goal is to
Okay.
ensure that all of the technical teams meet their milestones and deliverables.
Right.
What else do project managers do?
They also manage team and make sure the requirements are taken from the stakeholders, completely understood, perfectly understood, and translated to engineers so they can do their job. And if engineers can't do something, then again, if there is risk associated, if there are changes, if there's a can't do or can do, that's communicated to stakeholders and the sponsors. And based on that, the change request is made, and then the whole change is made and audited in the end. The measured difference in variance is also, that's another thing. A variance in schedule cost are handled, and if they are big enough, then they're escalated to the upper management.
Love that. Perfect. Now, apply that and answer this question. Okay. Tell me about a large-scale project that you managed.
I have managed 80 to 90 projects that had multiple phases from testing phase to closing phase. One phase would be documentation and collecting the requirements. That's called the test document, which has how to test the chip, what not to do, how to measure the readings taken out of the IC, how to calculate the average and everything, and what's pass and what's fail. Once the requirements are gathered, the next phase is to go ahead and create the hardware test circuit for the integrated circuits, which again involves the involvement of designers, because if there are any exclusions, say some pins cannot handle a specific voltage, but then the power supply can only do so much, then what's the resolution? So design and test have to sit together to review the final test equipment design and make any improvements based on what the designer says. Then the third phase would be to go ahead and create the software, the code based on the test document, because the code does all the measurements and calculations. So that is proceeded in phase 3. Usually designer is not involved, but it's just something that you can work with the embedded team to get the software right. And in phase 4, the hardware, the software, and the tested units, the packaged units delivered will all come together and we test the units. In phase 5, we start to measure, monitor, and control what the results would be if they are. And here's where we use Lean Six Sigma principle, where's the CPK value in the math, if the quality standards are not met, or if it doesn't pass the basic functionality, then what is the root cause? Where is the root cause coming from? If it's from design or somebody else, or if it could also be manufacturing, which is the silicon itself might not be functioning right, then that specific department is involved, and in the end, everything goes well. Then in phase, I believe 6, we release the project into the market.
Much better. Much better. Now, there's still some elements where you can talk about how you had to do some reporting analysis, how
I'll
you
work on that.
communicate with stakeholders, maybe there's like revisions to projects, requirements can change, you need to communicate, requirements between technical and non-technical teams, all that other stuff, right? But much better, right? This sounds more like
that makes sense.
Project management, right?
I'll work on this.
And there's some helpful comments. Thank you from Adib and Patrice. They're also giving you some additional tips when you are trying to sound more like a project manager. So you can take a look at those in the chat later on as well. But much better. Sounds way different. Alrighty, ready for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So since you are applying for a sustainability project coordinator role, tell me, what do you know about sustainability practices related to hardware and silicon?
I don't know much about that one, because that's a Cisco position, and they called it sustainability because the department is sustainability. But the description didn't say much about what that sustainability is. The only thing I can think of is low wastage. Low wastage of, okay, I can convert this into low wastage of resources. To have more engineers in working on one project, I would have to talk to the other project manager if to see if we can share resources to reduce to increase productivity and reduce cost and time. Yeah, something like that. That's a hard one.
It's a hard one, and it's more role specific, but in general,
Yeah.
if you are applying for like a sustainability role at any hardware company, I know Apple has them, Cisco has them, all hardware companies have sustainability arms now, mostly due to government, I would say, requirements, especially if you're headquartered or based in California. So sustainability is as it's described, right? Or as one would, or on its face value,
Environmentally,
which is like, typically it's about recycling hardware that they either produce, manufacture, or get returned by customers. Or like if they like, I'm sure
could it
like
also
Apple, for
mean products longevity?
it could, yeah, it could. But like at Apple, for example, they try and use as much recycled raw materials, right? But whenever people trade in their old iPhones, and then they will use them to manufacture new iPhones, for example, right? Same thing with like the packaging that they use and a whole bunch of other stuff. So just be prepared to talk about that if you are applying for a sustainability focused role.
Got it. That's a good point to take.
Mm-hmm. All right, ready for the next question?
Mhm.
And by the way, chat, if you guys have questions that you want us to practice, don't be shy, let us know. All right, so imagine we hire you here at Apple as a project coordinator. And imagine that there's a really senior stakeholder in your project, okay? But they're being really difficult to work with, and their team is behind on a deadline. So they're
A
going to potentially
stakeholder.
miss a milestone. A very senior stakeholder, like an executive director level person. So their team is behind schedule, and because of that, your project will miss a milestone. How are you going to handle this?
I think for this one, I would talk to other project managers and maybe even the stakeholder to see what resources can be made available in parallel. For example, from other project managers or projects, if there are extra resources or um, there's some float time that can be maybe utilized over here, then I would try to accommodate for missed resources to meet the deadline. At the same time, I think I would also talk to the stakeholders what are the risks of um, delaying a milestone a little bit or dividing the milestone into smaller chunks and adding it to the next milestone.
What else would you want to do?
I would also calculate the risk costs for doing this and the variance that would affect the project and present it, analyze the math, and if it's acceptable, then maybe present it as proof to other project managers and stakeholder and to the stakeholder.
Okay, very good start. Very, very good start. Do you think your answer is too long or too short, or just right?
Short. I think it would be nice to add examples, but then I would have to think about how to incorporate my side of examples into this kind of a question.
You don't
Technical.
need to incorporate any examples, right? So this is a hypothetical question, which a lot of companies will give you. They're basically having you solve an imaginary problem in your future role there, right? So they're not asking you to tell them about a time where you've done this, because they're asking you, how would you handle this at Apple? And you don't work at Apple right now, right? So it's going to be different context, different product, different stakeholders, different everything. And that's why they're not asking you for an example. They're asking you, imagine, right, you were here and this happens. So the first thing that I would recommend is you should probably ask me some clarifying questions first, right? Because right off the bat, you just assumed that they're behind schedule because they don't have enough resources.
Got it.
Right? That was your immediate assumption. But how do you know that that's true? That won't be true all the time, will it?
Got it. That makes sense.
Right? What if he has enough engineers but they're just not doing it. Or maybe he has enough engineers, but they misunderstood the requirements and they actually finished what they thought they were supposed to do, but turns out it's wrong. And now they're going to be behind schedule. But his team was actually working on schedule. That could be another
Got it.
scenario, right? There's many different reasons why a team may miss a deadline. So first, you should probably try and understand why that possibly happened, right? So maybe ask me some clarifying questions first. See if you can figure that part out. And then that will help drive your answer. And then maybe you even want to present different scenarios and different solutions of how you would handle those scenarios, right? Because that would show them that you really do have that breadth of knowledge, right? Because for example, you could say, well, first I want to understand why this team is behind schedule. Is it A, because of resources and they don't have enough? B, maybe they do have enough resources, but they misunderstood the requirements, right? C, maybe they are properly staffed and they actually understood the requirements, but they don't have the technical expertise in-house to actually accomplish the requirements passed down by the design team, right? Those are three common scenarios that I know based on my experience. Now, for each scenario, let me tell you how I would handle that, right? That would make you seem like a super awesome candidate. Why would that make you sound super awesome?
Well, because you know what to do. You're perfect for the role because you have that out of the box thinking to find a solution when these problems come. It shows that you can think critically and you can get the job done.
Exactly. It also shows them that because of your great experience, you already can predict possible reasons as to why, and you already know solutions for all these different reasons why, right? As opposed to a
Right.
candidate who just gives one specific example, one specific scenario, right? But you are saying, hey, look, there's like 5 different ways this could happen. Here's all 5, and I have answers for all 5.
Right.
That, right? That's like, wow, she's good, right? As opposed to, well, if they're short of resources, let me tell you how I would fix that. Because they're thinking, well, what if they're not short of resources? Does she even consider that? Right? But you're saying, oh no, yeah, I've thought about that, and I've thought about this, and I've thought about this and this.
Got
Right?
it.
They're going to be so impressed. So anytime you hear like, imagine you needed to do blank, or pretend that you did this, or hey, if we asked you to do blank, how would you do it? Those are when you're going to want to go, okay, I'm not going to use the STAR method. They're not asking me to talk about what I've done, right? They want
Got
me
it.
to walk them through my strategy or my approach about how I would do this specific thing at their company. Cool. Any questions? Those are really hard questions. So
No, that's good. I'm learning a lot. I just want a recording of this session somewhere though.
I think Albert is going to be recording
This
this and
is
uploading
gold.
it. All right. Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you utilize your data analysis skills in this role?
This would be the Lean Six Sigma a concept, which is, I mean, there are a few ways of doing using data to there are a few ways of analyzing the data. There's um, Pareto charts, which are histograms to rank risks. There's also I can't think of the I can't think of project management tools. I know there are many, especially for the risk management, and for quality analysis we use CPK from Lean Six Sigma, which is I can't remember of technical terms.
Then don't go technical. Just answer the question. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I think the internet is lagging. Let's see. Do you want to provide any additional feedback while she figures out her internet?
Yeah. So for this question, and I'll read it again. How would you utilize your data analysis skills in this role? So yes, there are some concepts from Six Sigma, which would be one way to answer the question. But also, they're going to want to know just in general, how would you plan to use data analysis as a project coordinator or a project manager? And in an engineering context, you probably want to use data and analysis here to break down and forecast milestones as accurately as possible, right? Understanding what are technical requirements, how long would that typically take, how many engineers does it require, what skill sets does it need, right? And then looking at the existing skill set and team structures within your company and figuring out, okay, which teams need to be involved, how am I going to be able to accurately forecast and set realistic but sometimes aggressive milestones. Also, if a team is possibly going to miss a milestone, right,
Mhm.
you're going to want to use your data analysis skills to understand truly why. Where is this coming from? One of the examples that Simran shared earlier was around they needed to identify why 30% of the, I guess, products or batches or whatever were meeting performance goals and not even powering on, right? If you have an engineering test team, that probably would be something that they would do. But if you didn't have that, you would probably also want to jump in as the project coordinator, right, and figure out, okay, why did we miss our certain deliverables, right? And then if you can understand where the
Okay.
problem is coming from, then therefore as the project coordinator, you can provide some type of solution. Also, leadership will be asking you as to updates, right? So you're going to need to find a way to present data to show them analytically how the team is performing over time. And also, the leadership team is going to expect you to explain why things may not be going according to plan. And so you will also need to be able to do analysis for that as well,
Got
right?
it.
Because what you can't say is, oh, I don't know why, I'm waiting for the test team to tell me, right? That's not going to look good in a meeting that you're running with senior stakeholders, right?
Got it.
Now, I'm sure she was going to get to all of that, but then her
No.
audio uh, dropped out. So, okay.
I think for that question, the way I was thinking is you're right. I could have said work performance data, work performance information, and work performance report too, because we use it work, gather information out of the data given to us and then convert that into reports and send it out to stakeholders. Also, we gather the same data to do parametric estimation, that is use historic data for similar projects and use those to estimate milestones and resources for this project. When you said data to me, again, test engineering role, it for me it was like math or like numbers or like measurements, and so I was stuck for like one task instead of looking at the project level, expand it to the project level. So that makes sense.
Yep. Very good, though. Very good. Okay, let's do this last one. So, how do you ensure that you always can stay organized?
By keeping track of everything, have one tracker that tracks um, everything that needs to be organized, and that one little thing can go a long way in keeping everything neat. And you know where exactly what is, or what the schedule is, what the next event is, and um, who gets the next resource, from my project to another project. Um, when is the time to talk to stakeholders, and etc. I think a good tool like Jira software or MS project goes a long way in keeping things organized. That's what project managers use to control everything.
Okay. Do you think your answer is too long, too short, or just perfect?
Maybe too short.
What would you want to talk about to make it longer?
I think I would like to talk about some of the features that this kind of tool can have to, in this one, I could give an example.
You could give an example, but what's the point of the question? How do you ensure that you stay organized? Well, why would they ask you this question?
They want to see how organized I am.
Of course.
How I can handle multiple projects at the same time.
Ah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Also, this is about how you can handle this, right? It's not about how Jira can handle multiple projects, right? They didn't ask you, how can Microsoft Project be used to stay organized?
Got it.
Because what does that show them? It shows them that you are reliant on a tool to stay organized, right? They're asking you, hey, how do you stay organized at work? And you say, Google Calendar, obviously. Let me tell you about the functions of Google Calendar that I use to stay organized, right? That doesn't show them that you are organized. That shows them that Google Calendar is a great tool that, or in this case, Jira, it shows them Jira is a great tool. You can create test cases, run scenarios, whatever. But that doesn't show them that you, this candidate, me, I am organized.
Got it.
Make sense?
Uh-huh. So still though, when they're asking me organized is a very broad word though. So in this case, I'm guessing specifically they want to know how I can handle multiple projects and stay organized. Like how do I do under pressure? I think that would be the question.
Right, because it's all related to context of the role, right? If you were applying for a test engineer role, I mean, they probably wouldn't ask you how you stay organized, but if they did, then it would be in the context of a test engineer, how you stay organized. But this is for a project manager role. So exactly to your point, right? You'll probably be handling multiple projects all at the same time, right? How are you going to stay organized? Well, you can't just say, well, I'm going to use Jira.
Got it.
Right? Because that's not a system to ensure that you are going to be organized, right?
Got it. I think an example I would give in this one, and you can give me the right answer later. Over here, it would be a little personal question too. So I am going through a 7-month boot camp with University of Massachusetts, been giving mock interviews, working on 3 projects at my work, and volunteering at a nonprofit where I am training to be a meditation teacher to combat stress and help others combat stress. And there are 4 milestones that came in 1 month, which is May. And I have been taking each day as it comes with, even if it takes me extra hours, I make sure that I divide the tasks until the milestone is met. And I make sure to do all of my tasks for that day with some buffer in my schedule to give me enough time to rejuvenate as well as catch up. Yeah, that would be one personal combination. Yeah, a mix of professional and personal.
I like that. Now we just need to add a little bit more strategy and structure to it, but I like that because it shows them how you can handle multiple things, like a little bit of a humble brag, right? It's like, hey, I'm working full time and I'm doing this program and I'm volunteering, right? So all of that is really good. Super good. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you all found this helpful. And Albert said the recording will be up in the Facebook group. And then of course he will add this to YouTube as well. But thank you all again for watching, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Albert. I got to run.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Albert.
Corey. Facebook
Should I
group,
cut it?
or join us on Eventbrite to find more events. And with that, thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.